who or what would you consider is the supervillain that's currently attacking Joshua Salgado right now, and what are you doing to fight him?
Ooh, I think the supervillain that's attacking Joshua Salgado is Joshua Salgado. And I say this because
Nice. Welcome back, everyone. Super excited to have you listening in on the newest show. And currently, we have another very special guest. He is a very dynamic individual. I met him in a business mastermind that focused on veterans and entrepreneurship, and he was just crushing it on all levels. He's still very active in the military and literally just got back from a very, very high op tempo deployment yesterday. So he took the time, wanted to get on this call, and we are just super excited to hear from Josh from Absolutely Cosmic Podcast. He's got a lot of really interesting things to share with us. Welcome back, Josh.
thank you for having me on. It's an honor. It's really cool to see your flow, you and your element. I saw your eyes light up with your intro, and it's awesome to see fellow podcasters in their element. So
Yeah,
thanks.
absolutely. It's been so cool to see you grow on the business side. Your hands are in so many pots right now, but you're also just crushing it in service to your country. You're working with very, very elite units and you're working extremely hard over there. So as you're back, do you mind just telling us a little bit about how your deployment was, what it was like, and then we'll get into a few questions from there.
Yeah, definitely. So if you don't know, I'm a C-130H Loadmaster. So my job is basically in the back of the cargo compartment of our aircraft. I load, I unload the aircraft. I do weight and balance. When airdrop missions are set, that's another mission capability we have. We have some other stuff down the pipeline that's kind of working for our career field. But typically we have air, land, and airdrop. In flight, we're scanning for threats. We're scanning hydraulic systems. We're making sure that cargo stays secure. We manage passengers. And this past deployment was my second deployment out to the Horn of Africa. We were operating in countries like Somalia and Kenya, flying every other day, kicking it out there with a lot of tier 2 operators. We were supporting their operations as they're, kicking down doors and putting out the good fight. A lot of MARSOC Raiders and Green Berets right now, which is really mind-blowing to go from being a kid who would watch like cartoons and movies and Rambo, and then being on a podcast with you, a former SEAL, working with those guys downrange. I had this whoa, wait a minute. I just got to do a lot of cool stuff for the past 3 months and flying, every other day. We're moving a lot of cargo. We did Medevacs, just a lot of different stuff that you don't do in the stateside. And being my second deployment out to that region of the world, it was kind of like my second home.
That's awesome. That's so cool to hear. And that is one thing that I definitely miss about my time in the military is the amount of things that you do in such a short period of time is really mind-blowing. Whenever you're talking about just your pre-deployment training into the deployment, all the things you accomplish on the deployment, and it hits so many different spheres, strategic, tactical, on the ground, different areas of personal development in your life, and you're just doing so many things. Then whenever you transition to, say, outside of the military, that pace slows down. You're not hitting all these crazy dynamic, I just did 58 missions. You know what I'm saying? It slows way down, and the amount of things that you influence, it gets, in my opinion, it seems like it just gets drawn out on a longer timeline. So you don't get as many of those just endorphin rushes and dopamine hits.
I think one thing about, especially being a Loadmaster specifically, that we share kind of with you guys is our job is when we're loading and engines are running and we're in these airfields that are potentially contested. It depends. There was a few nights where we were getting intel briefs and had to bring on extra body armor because they're like, there may or may not be something going on tonight in this location that we're going to. And so the adrenaline's up there, you're hyper aware. So coming back home, and again, being my second deployment, I kind of know that it takes a little time to readjust, but coming back home, it's definitely true. You just feel like this, everything's a bit slower. There's a different pace. There's almost this, I got to be going and doing, and actually relaxing is more intentional. I actually have to take a time to be no, take a minute. We're not rushing around. We're not trying to get XYZ. Take a breath. You're off. You're off. You get to relax. And I have to be more intentional about that. And now being my second time, there's a little more awareness with that, but for sure. And I love it though. I love the adrenaline rush that comes from, doing our
Big
jobs.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's such a great thing that you're recognizing that and that you're noticing it, and, I mean, your job is so incredibly valuable. Whenever we were in Afghanistan, we our main supply route was heavily IED'd, getting the support to get all the moving parts to get traditional resupply for, like, what most outposts were getting at the time was a lot more logistically complicated, and coincidentally, we didn't get that type of resupply as often, so we had to coordinate airdrops on a regular basis just to get our basic necessities, diesel fuel, water, food, all those things, so we would be on the ground doing the calls and confirming LZ, all those things, getting these things coordinated, getting them dropped, and for the most part, the drops went off without a hitch. There was one where it was a little too close and it was a little, I think it landed on a building, like, literally right outside the base too. So it was, it's never a dull moment.
Yeah. 100%. You could blame the navigator for that one. I'm just kidding, but again, it's an honor, and it's cool to be able to work with you guys, like, operationally. Like, I think that's the sweet spot about aviation is you could be working with other aviation, packages like fighters and moving their equipment, their maintainers, their pilots, right? You could be moving just conventional forces or conventional equipment. And then, like, one thing that we moved a few times was UAV drones. Like, you can move UAV drones one day and you just never know what you're going to get. We moved an LMTV. We got it like the night before, loaded up to our load planning software that goes out from every airfield. And it kind of just does like all the mixing of it between the front end and pilot, magic and our stuff. It kind of gives us a little information on that. And I remember some of our supervisors like, hey, you're moving, we call them a T3. It's 3 separate pallets. So, it's a big boy. It's, you got to really be sharp with your upload and get it really marshaled in line. So you never know, again, being a loadmaster, you never know who you're going to work with and what cargo you're going to get. And I appreciate the support from, it's always awesome to have some of what we call you guys, the snake eaters all hyped up about us coming in.
Yeah, dude, it's always great to have you guys because you guys bring so many capabilities to the table, and really, if it weren't for you guys, we wouldn't be able to do our jobs without being able to get resupplies, without being able to get diesel fuel, without being able to get weapons, equipment, ammunition, or even us moved around the theater. I mean, we're dead in the water. So it's always been a pleasure. I've always had great experiences working with the aviation side for sure. So you talked a little bit about it. I want to kind of circle back there. You talked about, hey, growing up, being really involved in the comic books, having these superheroes. And now, like you said, you're kind of living that life. You are that superhero. You've like turned yourself into the person that you kind of imagine. So putting that front and center, why do you think there's such a huge crossover between special operations community and, let's just say, nerd culture?
I think, well, one, this is kind of a thing that I've kind of observed is that when you're in a highly adrenaline or high intensity career field where you need to be on point, if you're not on point, you get hurt, you damage something that's, almost irreplaceable in the moment, someone can get killed, right? And so, like, for the type, you have to be a type A, lean forward type person. You have to get it done. Like, if that mission's not completed, again, people can get hurt. People will not live potentially. All of our jobs in the military are important, but those jobs that have a very critical, specific mission, that's a lot of pressure on people. And I think for those of us who kind of grew up in that nerdier or like Dungeons and Dragons, video games, comic books, action figures and trading cards and all that stuff, I think it's kind of like a way for us to decompress and also process some of that stuff that we experience on a subconscious level. Because I think a lot of times, especially when you're in that moment, you don't realize how much you're soaking in and how much like the experience that you have, but your subconscious is, your brain is. So like when you go to bed at night and you can't sleep and you're like, that restlessness, it could be because you didn't decompress properly or you didn't get to process it. So I think a lot of times these superheroes and comic books, that's part of it, helps you decompress. But I also think for a lot of us, we want to live up to a standard to help others and be there for others. That's the biggest thing. We go for love and country. No one joins the military to make, $1 million a year. We join because we have a deeper reason, a call to service, call for our country. And so like a lot of these heroes, they embody that. They embody that idea of sacrificing a little bit of yourself, or in a lot of cases, a lot and everything of yourself for others to make sure that others are okay, others are free, others are safe. And so I think we can align our morals in that way with superheroes a lot of time. And when you pair it with a character that has cool superpowers or is kind of badass, like you're like, okay, like I can get behind this character. They speak to me, so to speak.
That's very great points. You touched on a couple areas there that I want to dive a little deeper into. So you were talking about a way to decompress, which I think's super important, and it's a lesson that I learned kind of the hard way. Going through life, whatever that life is, you're going to be exposed to things. You're going to be taking on things, just like you said, you're going to be needing to process them. And processing them whenever you're just going from deployment to deployment, move, move, move. You've always got this new mission. You're always pushing yourself to be better. You're always doing all those incremental steps that the mentors are pushing into you, your leadership's pushing into you, your old guys are pushing into you. And you're always training for that next level of leadership, that next level of success. And a lot of times that decompression and that processing kind of falls to the wayside. It definitely did for me in a big way, and all of a sudden, all of it kinda hit me all at once like a freight train. That slowed me down, that changed my life. A lot of big changes happened. There's a really great book called The Body Keeps the Score, where it talks about how your body builds up all of these different things, and it can manifest itself, it can express itself in very different ways. So just for sustainment, like coming out of the military and I was still stuck on high performance, elite performance, maximizing human performance. What can I do to just help myself and others always take that next ridgeline and always take that next level? And I think in all of that, having not processed it, it was like these two vectors just collided and it was like a massive explosion in my body and in my mind. So I've been picking up the pieces from that fallout. But whenever you said decompress, I just really wanted to touch on that for the listeners, for somebody who
Mhm.
is in one of these high speed environments. And even if you're not, just know whatever you're inputting, your body is absorbing. The
Mhm.
body is keeping that score, good, bad, ugly, whatever it might be. You're going to have to deal with that at some point. That is going to have to be processed in some way or another. So find those healthy ways to help you process it and don't ignore it, or you might have a big explosion like I found myself in.
Well, one, I want to say, I appreciate your vulnerability, you sharing that experience, and like the fact that you're rebuilding shows an incredible amount of like, human strength that you have. After my first, I don't know if you could hear, there's some sirens going on in the city. After my first deployment, I kind of had a similar thing. It wasn't even as high tempo as this deployment, but you come back and it's a change of pace. You got to get back into the human life. And I just kind of went back into it. I didn't give myself any grace, any time. And again, I crumbled. I ended up just going into a very dark spot mentally, mental health wise. And so, like, that has been a very big intentional part of my life going forward. I knew this deployment would be kind of a test, that being able to rebuild. We're going on a deployment again. Let's try it again and let's do it with a little bit more systems. One thing is, especially us type A individuals who are very like goal driven, who are very ambitious, who have high tempo, high intensity jobs or high output jobs. And it doesn't have to be like military or law enforcement or first responder, but you could be, an accountant that works at a very large firm that's very busy. All these stressors manifest in such different ways for every person. It's perspective based too. And so, like, a lot of us, we're very go, go, go. We don't want to quit. We want that next accomplishment. And it almost feels weak when we fail and we fall apart, or we take a knee to decompress and take a breath. And I want to hit on a note that there's a story I heard. The chaplain on our base, he mentioned, he said that there was two lumberjacks in a forest once, and one of them just kept cutting throughout the whole day. And he noticed he got to 10, he got to 15 trees, and then he got to 17, and then he got to 18, and by the end of the day, he only got 19 trees. So this other lumberjack, he starts off, he gets 5 trees, he takes a break, he drinks some water, he eats a little snack, he gets another 5, he gets another 5, he's at 15. He goes in, he has lunch, he sharpens his blade, he sits by the fire, and he comes out and he ends up doing 25 versus the one who went straight through and was going hard the whole time got 19. And the moral of that story is that sometimes, and not sometimes, but the majority of the time in life, when you take a step to sharpen that axe blade, you come out much more productive in the long run. And so, like, if you take care of yourself, especially after a period of high intensity, or even if it's just your 9 to 5 and it's just your 30 minutes a day of maybe journaling or reading something or quiet time on a walk with your dog or whatever it may be. And we can go in, I guess, what's worked for me if you'd like to go in deeper, I guess, what kind of systems I put in place after that last deployment to kind of rebuild and restructure.
Yeah,
But
that
for me,
sounds great.
thank you. Yeah,
Go
for
ahead.
me personally, it was fitness. Like, I always enjoyed fitness, but I realized fitness was that first thing. If you're anxious, you're stressed, you're depressed, you're going through a rough breakup, right? Go to the gym, move that energy, move the body, lift some weights, be angry, sit with those feelings in the gym and do something. Especially as men, we're machines, we're built to move. So, like, get that initial restless, upset energy, that initial fluster of energy out. Be tired. That's good. The best motivator for a six pack is heartbreak. So, um, but it's true. And then the next one is the information we put in our brains, right? The podcasts we listen to. Are you listening to the people in your life who may have a negative perspective and negative limiting beliefs? And are you listening to things that are not going to help you? Dark things, sad music constantly. The light, that's a form of information. It's sensory input. Are you going outside getting enough light? Is your apartment, your house, your room are you able to put the shades up? How much are you actually, again, and that's why I put working out as the bottom, if you think of it as like a triangle at the bottom, how much are you moving? How much are you eating? And all that information that we're putting into our body. What are you listening to? What music you listen to? You listen to podcasts. Have you read? And that goes into the next little step, which I call kind of like the spiritual or the small goals. Because the first two, if you're starting to rebuild yourself, kind of happen naturally typically. It's usually we watch motivational videos or we watch some podcasts, we start getting back in the gym, we start feeling really good. But then you start stagnating again. You might feel stale in the gym. And one thing that I noticed is make a to-do list, is small victories, set some small, super small goals, like making your bed every day, doing the dishes, having a system about cleaning the house. That's something that changes the whole atmosphere. Maybe it's taking one online college class, whatever it may be, just super small goals that you can chip away at, that that while they're challenging, you still can accomplish, that the light is at the end of the tunnel. And it's something that if you venture there, you can accomplish it. You just need to put a little bit of work in. And so, like, those small goals lead into bigger goals, but they create this foundation of confidence in your day and in your weeks and in your months and in your years that over time you're like, okay, well, I went to the gym for 30 days straight. I was making my bed, my apartment's clean. Maybe I stopped drinking for every day of the week, whatever it may be. You clean it up a little bit and you start to set these goals. And you're like, okay, well, what's the next challenging thing? And more often than not, it snowballs upward. You're like, okay, well, if I've been running every day, well, let's do a 5K. And I've done 3 5Ks, this past, 2 months. Let's do maybe a 10K and let's do a half marathon and let's do a full marathon. Screw it. And, like, I've noticed that looking at the small stuff has led to accomplishing the mountain. And with the small stuff, it allows you to take a step down, right? And that's why I call it's kind of like the third step up on that pyramid that we're starting to get smaller and more specific. But with the small goals, you also have to take time to breathe and be proud of yourself and forgive yourself for falling apart, because it may not have been completely your fault, but damn well, if you're in this point where you're aware enough that you fell and you're trying to rebuild it, that's a hell of a step. And so it's these little chunks of things, right? Just be proud of yourself for the small stuff you did. Like, hey, I did make the bed. Hey, I did wake up. I set this goal and I stood to it. And even if we're not there at the, like, end goal yet, and we're at the end of the timeline, we stuck to it. We stuck to it. And that means I'm the man. And that means I can do anything. So let's give myself another 6 months and let's keep trying towards this goal, or let's adjust. And I think that's where the military mindset comes in, because a lot of times we have mission objectives, we have goals, right? And if they're not accomplished, you have to just reassess and reattack. And so, like, you take that objective mindset of you just had to do it and take that into your life and take the time to just sit in that feeling. That's another thing at that third step, I think, is just sit in those feelings. When you feel crappy, when you feel sad, when you feel overwhelmed because you just got back from a deployment, or maybe it's end of tax season and you're an accountant and you're like, oh man, what just happened? And it feels like a blur. Take a moment to sit there and be like, well, let's explore it in our head. Why? What is it? What are we thinking? Where are those feelings in my body? A lot of times that allows you to just process it. And a lot of times that itself lets those feelings go by just accepting them and not lingering with them or let them sit at the back of your head. Because it sits at the back of your head and that weight on your neck hurts and that weight on your shoulder hurts and that weight on your back hurts. And then next thing you know, your whole body hurts and you're tired all the time and it's a snowball effect either way. So choose that time to reset the goals. We did it. I'm still feeling crappy. Why is that? So you sit in your feelings, you set small goals, and you just be proud of yourself for those small goals or even big goals if you've accomplished them. Don't let anybody tell you any different. You did something awesome, like you just crushed tax season, even if it burnt you out a little bit, you crushed tax season as an accountant, and don't let anybody take that from you. You've been working out for 30 days straight. It doesn't matter if you're 10 minutes on a treadmill. Don't let anybody take that from you. And then the top, the tip of the pyramid is what I call spirituality. It looks different for everybody. Me, I was raised Catholic. I'm a Christian. And for me, it's about a relationship with God and reading the Bible. A lot of times for me, that's my spiritual guidance, being able to read the Bible and say, well, how does this relate to my life and who I'm trying to be and the man I'm trying to become? And it also gives me a feeling of rest. I'm like, okay, well, my whole life isn't under my control. It's under the control of this all powerful, all intelligent creator, Jesus, and God the Father and the Trinity. So I'm just going to trust that if I'm doing the right things, life will work out. And these feelings are just feelings. I'm a human being, a machine, a bio machine. So trust that it'll all work out. I think that's the tip of the sphere, is that spirituality. Meditation does that too. That kind of bridges the gap between the two. That's just kind of
That
my thought process.
Yeah, that's super awesome. I like the triangle, the pyramid, the absolutely cosmics hierarchy of needs.
Yeah.
Getting some workout in, getting that breathing in, spirituality up there at the peak. So you touch on something that I thought was really interesting whenever you're talking about, hey, maybe you did fall down. Maybe you got knocked down, you didn't hit that goal, life happened, major car accident, injury, who knows? Like you're derailed majorly in some way. You brought up some really good points. Like bad things happen. Sometimes it's your fault, sometimes it's not. But whenever you said you have the self-awareness to recognize it, you have the self-awareness to say, hey, this still isn't where I want to be. So I think that that is a major defining factor in the difference between
Mhm,
falling into a victim mindset where you're constantly stewing on it, you're letting what happened shape your new reality.
mhm,
Transition from that, hey, okay, yes, this happened. Yes, I've got a lot of big pieces to pick up. Yes, it's going to take a long time to pick these pieces up, but I'm not going to stay here.
mhm,
I'm not going to let that major negative event in my life keep me down. I'm going to stand back up. I'm going to, yes, take that breath, breathe, sit with it, process it, look at the rubble. You mentioned the Bible, so I'll bring a story from there. We've got Job. Job lost everything. Job was targeted at a very high spiritual level, very spiritual warfare, heavy spiritual warfare, lost everything, lost his family, lost his income, lost everything that he'd been blessed with throughout his life, right? He sat with it. He sat with it for a while. He scraped his skin with the pot shards and set in the ash. And yeah, so you're absolutely right. You've got to say that gives you that processing. That is an important and healthy step, but he didn't stay there. He got back up.
mhm.
He recognized truth. He realigned himself with truth, purpose, etc., and he kept moving, right? So, I'm so glad that you brought some of those things up because sometimes whenever it's very devastating, it can be easy to fall into a victim mindset. It can be easy to notice that your language isn't necessarily aligning, your self-talk isn't necessarily aligning, and if you've got other complex issues, complex trauma, traumatic brain injury, anything like this, it can accelerate and perpetuate those things, so you really have to be cognizant, aware, and on it to help pull yourself out of those spirals as quickly as you possibly can.
Yes, 100%. You hit it on the nail on the head. Catching yourself in that moment, that is something that I had to work a lot on was when I started getting down or stressed out, I would just be like, I don't know why I'm so stressed out, blah, blah. And I realized that it was just a recurring theme of a few thought processes. And it was a little bit of like self esteem. And I was like, wait a minute, let's hold on. That first of all, if I'm at work, you don't get the time in my day, or if I'm working on the business, you don't get the time in my day to do that. We'll assess it later. And that oftentimes works. And it's weird because you have almost a self talk with yourself in your own head, but it works like a charm. And then also said like the same thing is like, no, that's incorrect. This is why. And you reframe the thought process. So if it's like, hey, I know after my heartbreak, I was like, I'm never going to find anybody else. And it's like, hey, wait a minute. No, what we need to do is take the time to just work on ourselves a little bit. And the right person with the right traits that you're looking for in a partner will come eventually. And as you just keep repeating that, it's almost a battle of wills to yourself. And eventually, it's almost like the tides turn a little bit and it starts to be where you find positives of things, and it's more positive thoughts because you've almost essentially rewired parts of that brain that are that thought process, that neural pathway.
Yeah, very great point. You've got those neural pathways. Any thought, any movement is going
Hmm.
to exercise movement is going to reinforce that pathway. That's what your muscle memory is, but it's a lot of times really like that neurotransmitter process, right? So it happens with our movements, with our ability to transition to our pistol and take effective shots, but it also happens with the thoughts that we feed ourselves. So I'm so glad that you made that parallel because those thoughts that we have, they dictate our reality in so many ways. So one of the things that's really fascinated me about the military is the wide variety of people that you're going to run into, right? So secret nerds, overt nerds, whatever, but you've got people playing D&D, you've got gamers that are all
Hmm.
super into the digital video games, anime fans, whatever it might be, your gym jockeys, your more entrepreneurial focused guys who are, studying accounting or stock trading and investing. You know what I mean? There's like such a diversity. So you have synthesized a lot of these. Really, and that's one thing that I thought was, like, really impressive whenever we first met. I mean, you're still pretty young, but you just had this tenacity, this desire. You're just attacking life on all levels. You're deploying with high elite level units. You're building a business. You've got a podcast going. You've got all these goals. You've been working on, like, whole card games, like trading card games, like Magic the Gathering or Pokemon, and, like, all these very intricate things. Then you started a coaching, training, workout
Yes.
business. You're training for triathlons. So you've just got so many things going on, and it's amazing to see. So while you're doing this, launching comics, making figures, and maybe this deployment kinda helped show you this, but, you know, target discrimination. We can't shoot everything.
Hmm.
How are you deciding right now in real time which of these projects is your primary target and which ones are just targets of opportunity for the moment?
So for me personally, and again, this deployment really like shaped that because I had a lot of limited time outside of flying and outside of working. So it was like, well, I want to stay in the gym because we're in a combat zone. That's a requirement for the job that I'm working in. I don't want to get hurt pushing heavy stuff off the plane. I want to be able to run and, keep up, maybe do a triathlon once the weather gets good out here again. So I'm like, that's a no brainer. So that, minimizes the time even more. And so I was like, I need to be very specific. And so I kind of had a night where I just sat in my room and I was like, well, what is my overall life goal with this business in general? And I did that also with my like other occupational goals. I was like, what is it that I want to do? And I realized that for me personally, I'm only going to be here, us men, we don't live as long typically. So, maybe 60 to 80 years is kind of peak of our lifespan. I plan to live to 120, I kid, but we only get so much time on this earth, and I want to make an impact and leave something behind for other people. And I want to push the boundaries of what's possible as someone who's, on a truly independent scale. And so, this business has been kind of like a passion and an experiment. And I was like, well, what is it that I truly want? And like, it was literally the night before I left for this deployment that I published, this 256-page graphic novel, and that this itself was me processing a lot of the things I've gone through in life in general. A lot of the characters in there were parts of me, I guess, that I had struggled with or I would aspire to, or I would be like, oh man, like as people were fully, three-dimensional. So I realized that I've already accomplished something phenomenal and set the groundwork for kind of what my initial goal was with the business, was to make it the next IP to rival Marvel and DC, which is a hefty goal in itself, but we're going to do it. But I realized that I need to set my blinders on, and instead of being a machine gunner, even though that's fun because you get to pray and spray, I'm going to be a sniper, and we're going to hit one goal, and we're going to dial in. We're going to, sight in. And again, I don't have much experience with snipers, but from Call of Duty, you put the
Yeah.
reticle on there, and you go long range, and you go for that one target, and that's what it is. So what I realized is that we need to focus on building the IP, and we need to focus on building the business. The podcast, we can always pause it and bring it back later. And the beautiful thing about what we're doing is that even in this short period of time, with these new kind of set refined goals of focusing more so on the IP, intellectual property, and the story building of our brand, I've been able to network with a lot of people in the influencer world. We actually are going to be shortly running a pre-order for an indie toy. That's kind of the next product we're trying to work. So I actually have the prototype right here. This guy is the one of the villains from our early arc, and I could send you pictures and stuff like that, Brent,
Awesome.
to
Yeah,
help
that's great.
with the podcast editing. But he's actually one of the main villains of the early kind of story arc, and I figured it'd be really cool as a nerd to have a figure and then be able to sell it and produce a small, very short run figure line, very collectible figure line. So we're working that and using that to learn like kind of pre-order philosophy overall and some marketing things. So that was kind of thing I realized. IP is the core. IP is everything because you can build out more gymwear, you can build out movies, you can build out, and that's the main goal, is to have a large IP with movies and video games and licensing and figurines and all this stuff at the end goal. So we're dialing that in, and
That's
already,
that's great.
already,
I love the
thank you,
vision.
thank you. Already, what I'm seeing is that by dialing in, one, I'm more effective on that one goal, is things are kind of moving forward. We're able to take, okay, I only have an hour a day. These are the three things I need to get done, or the three larger goals. You break those down. And now I just accomplished one for this hour. And then, tomorrow I have another hour. And so I'm slowly starting to see that if you dilute some juice, it doesn't taste as good. But if you have the concentrate, it's much more potent. And so that's kind of the methodology that I've kind of realized and gone forward, is that this is kind of like my calling and my goal with the brand in general. And the podcast will come back eventually. It's just on a pause right now. But I've realized that we've been able to network with some influencers in the indie toy and action figure world. The 3D designer that actually designed up this figurine, we've been able to build a relationship with him and some other cool people and stuff like that, that we're building, slowly, that eventually could come onto the podcast. You're always welcome as well, Brent. And so, like, the people that you meet in the world and on these goals fit well for a podcast that would tie into a brand. So realizing that, it's like, okay, well, let's take a step back and how can we do this effectively?
Hey, that's super great. I love it. The vision is huge. The vision is out there. You're casting it, but you're not just talking about it. You're taking those steps. You're daily putting in the work, and I'm loving it. So every superhero has an origin story, right?
Yes. Yes.
You're returning from deployment. You've been working on this business for a while, right? You decided, hey, fitness workout's huge in my life. I'm going to start training for all these larger races, taking off these bigger chunks. But that's been like the discipline that you've been putting on the regular basis to make it happen. What would you consider as maybe your radioactive spider bite, or that major event in your life that was the turning point for you when you're like, you know what? I'm going to stop just watching comic books and watching these other intellectual properties, and I'm going to start creating my own.
So for the creation side, it kind of happened like I was just out of high school. Episode 7 of Star Wars came out. I was disappointed, honestly. Like, it's a good movie, but it's not Star Wars to me. And maybe that's nostalgia and me being a kid, but I was like, damn, what are they doing? And you have episode 8 and 9, and we see this with like the larger Marvel movies now. The MCU has kind of, again, become diluted. And there's a lot of reasons. I mean, a lot of people will say, oh, it's woke, but I think it's the best terminology is it's corporate. I think what they do is they're trying to allocate narratives to money. So they're trying to analyze, okay, well, if we do this narrative, do this character and do it in this way, or have this, token character in this way, we're going to make money on merchandise and blah, 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 rather than telling interesting stories. And so that's been a large piece on the creative side of creating a story was if I can have any impact on changing, because America is well known for a lot of things, but I think whether it's Hollywood, whether it's movies, whether it's comic books, and we have this culture of telling stories in a very unique way around the world outside of the rest of the world that I think we've kind of shied away from and kind of started with like the Westerns and you just had like the 80s is like the golden era of cinema where any idea could happen. And so like I was like, we need to go back to that. And this is kind of just my effort and my push to kind of hopefully if I can build this indie world and we can go back to having good stories, cool characters that aren't about, oh, are you gonna like this character? No, you don't have to like the character or the world or that story as long as you like one thing or as long as it entertained you a little bit or as long as it was kick-ass and it had a deeper meaning and it wasn't just made for corporations. So that was that storytelling thing. I was like, passion there. As far as fitness, kind of stems earlier. So I was born with bilateral club feet. I'm the first person to join the United States military with clubbed feet and then become an aviator as well, an enlisted aviator. I don't think there's anyone else with my condition that's been able to get past the military entrance processing and get the waivers, especially with 2 clubbed feet from birth. So that kind of was my biggest battle early on is like, I didn't have the money to go to college. And I was like, initially I wanted to go to the Marine Corps. I was like, I want to go Marine Corps. I want to fly planes in the Marine Corps. And the recruiter was like, well, you can't fly planes unless you have a degree, which I'm still working on my degree, but I fly on planes. That was my biggest battle. It was 4 military entrance process and station visits where you go through the whole physical. It was over like several years. I had 2 Navy Bureau of Medicine waivers denied. I put in a congressional inquiry to see if there's any way to overturn it or be able to submit more documentation stating, hey, I'm a healthy individual. It's just with my club feet. Again, that was denied from the Marine Corps. So I was permanently disqualified from the Marine Corps, like to the point where I reached out to my congressman. So there was no way for that. And so I just kept pursuing. And Army Guard for Connecticut, I put a waiver in. I think they messed up my package for that. So I got denied and I didn't even know until like months later. The Navy, I was going to try to join and be a corpsman. I can't be a Marine, but I could go and try to be a Greenside corpsman because I wanted to be with the grunts, I wanted to be, kicking it and be with the Marine Corps initially. And so that eventually, like the recruiters, a lot of them didn't even respond. And my buddy who was over in the guard unit that I'm in now, he's like, hey man, he's like, have you thought about going Air Force? And I'm like, oh, the Air Force, they're the weak, they're the chair force. They don't do nothing. I was like, they don't do anything at all. Me being ignorant and being young and being gung ho. I'm like, I want to shoot guns and, do the cool guy stuff. And he's like, no, no, no. He's like, talk to this recruiter. He's straight. He's going to talk to you straight about it. He likes working with people. He likes to challenge with people who have medical waivers and stuff as long as they're good people. So I worked with this recruiter who's phenomenal and got blessed. And I think it was the good man upstairs just directing me where he wanted me to go. He was like, hey, Josh, I love I love your passion, but we need you to go through this door instead. And so like I went back to MEPS and the same doctor that those 4 visits at MEPS that disqualified me, he was like, oh, he's like, you're fit now. He's like, we'll sign you up for the Marine Corps. And I was like, no, I'm sticking with the Air Force. I know where I'm at. I'm going to stick with the Air Force and do it. And he was like, okay. Came back as a Loadmaster was open in our unit. I interviewed for that. Actually, our soon to be chief actually interviewed me, and the Loadmaster I deployed with last time, he was our senior load on our crew, actually interviewed me as well. And so like I got in, did my flight physical right before COVID hit and before all the facilities and everything started shutting down, and came out with no hitch, no waivers, no nothing. 2 combat deployments later, I think on this deployment, I hit 1,000 flight hours. I have the Norwegian foot march 3 times now, but I did a 15 miler and about a month ago now for a ruck march, and 2 triathlons, a half marathon, a full marathon, the high rocks. I've done all these events and stuff. And so like, it's just been this push because I know that there's going to be somebody when I'm old and I'm the back in my day guy. I'm going to be able to inspire hopefully somebody, saying, hey, I was told you're not going to be able to do all this stuff. And then I did all that stuff, and I'm going to keep building on it. And that's the goal, is to hopefully inspire somebody who thinks they're not capable of doing something, whatever it may be. Say, hey, no, you just gotta keep going. Just keep beating yourself up until you get there. Keep pushing.
Dude, I absolutely love it. Your commitment throughout the whole process was like, "Hey, this is what I wanna do. I wanna serve. Yeah, I wanna go." In your head, it was this place first, but like you said, you took those stones, you took it path by
Mhm.
path, step by step, took that path step by step, get gradual nudges, sometimes big closed doors that told you,
Mhm.
"Hey, redirect over this way, look over this way." But your resiliency throughout the process, because I know those paperwork battles, those waiver processes, you went all the way up to Congress, which is very incredible, very good on you, and I mean, that is inspiring, hugely inspiring, because there's so many people who they say they wanna do something, that's what's in their head, that's what's in their heart. They go up, they talk to the recruiter, maybe they try 1 or 2 times, they get those denials, they get those no's, and they're like, "Alright, well, I guess there goes my dream," right? But no, you're like, "No, I'm making this happen. Where am I gonna find an open door? It's not here, it's not here, it's not here, but I'm gonna keep knocking, keep looking, keep finding, keep seeking, ask for help." You know what I mean? You didn't just, "Oh, well," you didn't just try to do it on your own. You reached out, you found every single possible opportunity to get through, and then that's the other part, is good people and good mentors.
Mhm.
Life changing. When you find that one person who'll get in your corner and say, "You know what? Let's work on this together." That's how I was able to become a Navy SEAL, realistically, is I had issues with my heart, issues with contract, all these things, and yep, had to get waivers, all that, but the contract I was in, unbeknownst to me, was really a reservist contract disguised as an active duty contract, and it was mostly just to boost the 8404 corpsman numbers within the reserve specifically.
Mhm.
So, it was called National Call to Service. I didn't realize that, I just knew, hey, I needed to be a corpsman or something else to be a Navy SEAL. Last minute, corpsman route felt right. I told myself all through high school that that was the last job I wanted to do. Right whenever it came time to, like, choose a rate or choose an MOS, which is, like, your job specialty, was when, corpsman just feels right. I'm gonna go do that, right? And it was, in so many ways, the right door to go through. But I got stuck on hold at core school because I passed the physical fitness test, had the dive physical, all those things. But whenever I went to go get my orders, they stopped me at like the detailing or whatever. And they're like, "Oh, there's a stamp on your record. It says National Call to Service. We can't give you orders to the special programs. We just can't." All right. Well, see you later. So, like, all right, that was at boot camp, right? So then I went to core school, which was my follow on command, get the job training. Screened again. You know what I mean? Don't take no for an answer. Screened again, pass the physical fitness test, and not just pass, like, I made sure that I was getting as high as I could and, like, pushing myself and you know what I mean? Not
Yeah.
just meeting the standard and going on, like, no, I'm gonna max myself out on every single physical fitness requirement, right? And get the very best score I can, right? Alright, all that happens. Well, there was a cell of the dive motivators there, which was like a program that kind of helped people who wanted to go special programs, help them logistically with workouts, with the paperwork, guiding them down the process, right? Well, one of the HMs, colorblind, he always wanted to go into special operations. Great, great guy, super professional, hard charger, served with the Marines, you know, was the all around dude, but he had his barriers. He was having trouble getting through it, but it didn't stop him from fighting just as hard for all those people that were coming up in the ranks after him. And he found a way to get the people who were wanting to go special programs on hold at the command until those orders and things got sorted out. And he even asked the chief of naval operations who came through, Mike Mullen at the time, "Hey, we've got all," he came in for a Q&A, like dog and pony, whatever. We're sitting there, and so he's like, "Yeah, I got a question. What about all these we know the Navy has this big push for increasing our special programs, be it divers, EOD, Navy. We have a huge body of motivated, passionate sailors right here that are hardworking, they're in shape, and they're stuck because of an administrative rule saying that their contracts won't allow them to go special programs. Is there any way that we can get that fixed so that we can hit your directives of building out these special programs?" Chief of Naval Operations, "I don't know, but I'll get back to you on that." And I'm thinking, yeah, right. We're not hearing from this guy. But no joke, a few months later, He said, hey, we're going to make a way. We just got to figure out all the legal paperwork and legal stuff, but it's coming down the pipe. So, yes, you fought through a lot. You went through a lot. And it's those things, like you told the story, and I just wanted to kind of like paint that picture a little bit differently from a different angle for the audience, because I think it's such an important point. Don't let your goal die. Don't let your dream die because of a roadblock here and a roadblock there. I talked to Remy Adelecki, and he's talking about Hollywood and how many denials you go through and how many people say no. Just keep pushing. Keep pushing forward on those goals. Keep pushing forward on those dreams. There's going to be resistance. There's going to be obstacles and barriers and challenges, but it's so important to not let those be the deciding factor. You should be the deciding factor. So, in that vein, right? You've been shaped by all these experiences, right? And now you've got this comic book graphic novel, and you've got a hero in the story. So would you mind describing to us this hero, what he kind of does? What is this hero? What is he made up of?
So this hero, he's called the Galactic Wanderer. And if you look at the logo of Cosmic Absolute, there's a specific reason why I chose this kind of 1960s, very vibrant looking astronaut as the main character of our kind of story and universe right now, our cosmos, so to speak, is because one, that's the logo. That's kind of the guy that started it all. But he's the Galactic Wanderer. And why is that? Because he was wandering. And at the time of creating the brand, right, and this was post my first deployment. This was post that very dark mental health where I was kind of rebuilding, and I was like, well, what do I want to build? Well, I want to start a brand. I want to make a gym wear brand. I'm going to make, and so like I was refinding my purpose in a lot of ways. That character, I put a lot of what I was going through and what I was redefining myself, refinding myself as into that character. And so like the Galactic Wanderer is this guy, and I don't want to spoil it too much, but he's had kind of a crappy, early life, and we can go deep in the lore a little bit, but he kind of lost his way. He's just been kind of wandering the cosmos, doing odd jobs, maybe smuggling a bit. He's got his flying saucer and his artificial intelligence that's kind of in the flying saucer, which we'll see become a character eventually in volume 2. He's got one shot where, at the ending of this comic book that we get to see. But the Galactic Wanderer really is the definition of refinding your purpose and being called back to a greater purpose, and not just wandering around, but being somebody that people can depend on and being that hero, even if you're kind of stoic. And in a lot of ways, and initially, I didn't want to show the Galactic Wanderer's face in the comic book. I was like, I wanted to do a little Master Chief, Halo kind of nod where his face is never shown because you are the Galactic Wanderer. I ended up changing that just because for elements of his backstory, it kind of helps you tie things together narratively a little bit. And in the end, we see him kind of fall into his purpose and what the cosmos deems as his purpose now, and him kind of refining that. And it kind of brings back his humanity a little bit. He's no longer just this soulless astronaut that does, kind of wanders around. He's now a man on a mission. And so there's a lot of factions and there's a lot that goes into the lore. So it's 12 pulp comics, put together. And that last one, Tales of the Galactic Wanderer, is kind of the nexus of everything, right? All this lore from pretty much thousands of star cycles back kind of feeds into this one story. We see the Galactic Wanderer meet up this alien kid named Danish Xenorjack on a planet that he once used to, he didn't live on, but he was very familiar with because he was in the Galactic Defense Force, or Tartaria, the planet of Tartaria's military. And he was a special operator, called Halo, Spartans and Warhammer Space Marines. And he eventually got out and kind of started wandering after losing his family, which is kind of dark. But on this planet, he refines this kid and saves this kid from what we call the Synthetic Federation, another implementation of what the Galactic Defense Force tried to do to stop war, stop crime, police the world, police the cosmos without risking their military and their people. And it kind of backfired because it turned into, again, it's an allegory. It's a homage to Skynet and Terminator, kind of turned into a Terminator scenario where, now they oppress the people and really it's just a small pocket of freedom fighters. And we see Danish Xenorjack and the Galactic Wanderer, and they kind of just explore Tartaria as its dystopian and its wholesomeness at this point. And A Galactic Wanderer's given a mission to basically destroy some computers and stuff like that, and he finds this cosmic shard, which is now going to set him, going forward, now going to set him on this mission to find the other cosmic shards that may or may not be causing some disruptions or some bad stuff. And Danish Xenomorph, his lineage in the story is told all the way back to that first story in our comic, which is kind of like telling of a chosen one prophecy, saying that there was a chosen one. He appeared, he took down Arcanos, which essentially is a fallen angel. And we've seen the predecessors to him. And we go to King Jack, Sean Jack, which is the prince of the Coqui kingdom, which I'm half Puerto Rican. So Coqui is the tree frog of Puerto Rico. And these are frog-like aliens. And they live very opulently, very royalty. And with King Jack and Sean Jack, there's a few stories. And this is where we get the Supreme Raider, which the little figurine is, that character. And he's the adopted son of King Jack. I haven't really explored too much why he's adopted, why he's orphaned, but I just think it's kind of a cool way to, introduce a different looking kind of character. But he basically there's no reason why he came from a royal family. He was given everything. He's a talented warrior. He just never would be able to be king because he's not Coqui, and he just wanted to conquer the cosmos, and he's just a bad guy. There's no real sympathy for him. He's a conqueror. I think sometimes villains should just be villains, and makes them more likable in a way. And so that's we see Supreme Raider kind of shape the Galactic Defense Force and how they fight. We see the Supreme Raider shape what is called in this whole prequel era as the Great War. We see the Supreme Raider kind of used as a proxy. So that's one thing that I noticed on my first deployment. We're read in on a lot of intel briefs, and obviously we can't talk about them, but
Right.
again, sometimes those intel briefs are pretty heavy, and you got to, for me at least, I want to process it and kind of understand it. And so using a third party, something that's not directly related to this world kind of helped me. And so Ernaceus, which is his real name, I guess, which is scientific name for hedgehog, I just figured it'd be kind of a cool nod. The Supreme Raider, he's used as a proxy by these alien squid race, and they're called the Tethodian Major. Another scientific name reference, Tethodian just means squid in Latin. And Major, I just figured it sounds cool, and they're bad guys. So, and they represent a near peer. There was a lot of that in the last few years, just Cold War era. We look at World War II, there's a lot of allegory today. The Cold War, World War II, near peer is what warfare is, right? And so what I think in nowadays, and this is my opinion, and this is why I kind of chose this route, and maybe we'll explore it more in future comics and future media, but Supreme Raider's used as a proxy. He's just a brute. He's just a warrior, right? He's just somebody that just wants to destroy. There's people like that in the world that just want to destroy. A lot of times they don't always have the means to do that on a scale, but there's sometimes other actors who have that finance and have that technology and have that influence that can feed it to those. And that's what we're going to explore with the Supreme Raider a little bit, is that idea of using the Supreme Raider and the Cosmic Marauders, which is a faction in our trading card game, as a proxy. And so, yeah, that was kind of the biggest thing with even deciding which figure I wanted to be the first indie figure. I was like, that has to be, because it's just such a complex theory that it's kind of cool that a little vintage looking action figure could carry that much, I guess, deeper thought. And that really sets the tone. We see that Sean Jack, because the Supreme Raider comes back and kind of wreaks some havoc and stuff. Sean Jack is displaced to Tartaria, in which he marries an alien woman that's not of the Coqui race. So his lineage kind of is diluted, so to speak. And that allegory because the Coqui are, a reference to my Hispanic and Puerto Rican heritage. Just like the fact that we're all a mix, like the island is a mix. You come to the States, and I've met more people that are half Puerto Rican that I've met fully, Puerto Rican or people from the island, right? We're a mix, just like America's the melting pot. And so I thought it'd be cool to slowly show that idea of that. And we meet Moses Jack, which is the father of Danish Xenomorph, and he has a very strong importance in the story. And he's an honorable character. I wanted to attribute to him more like a Captain America kind of honor. He's for love and country, for his people. But, it's a time of tumultuousness in cosmos. We have the Galactic Defense Force. They're the most elite military. Oh.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm loving the world building.
Yeah.
It is super immersive, super in-depth, and dude, you've got so many layers. Like you said, the factions and the I'm super excited to get into the graphic novel, to learn more about it and have these things come even more alive than you're already painting them, which is really great. Super dynamic, and that's what I think is missing in a lot of maybe some of the newer media is they don't take that time to really develop some of that backstory into some of those layers, and I think that's why some of our classics are still our classics
Mhm.
today, and why they're able to make franchises on and go into so many different layers of marketing and movies and spin-offs and everything is because of how deep and how much thought was put into each of these different factions and each of these different bodies. And I mean, you made it relevant to today. Like you're talking about, hey, we got these intel briefs where we're learning all these things. And obviously, there's so many factions out there. Anything that you see on the news is really just the most minute snapshot of
Yes.
what's actually going on beneath the surfaces. Like, it doesn't matter which national actor you put in there.
Mhm.
Venezuela, China, Russia, Pakistan, any of them. There's so many layers and so many, like, offshoots of different international terrorist organizations or international organizations that are trying to do different things, and they're trying to influence things in the way that they do. Whenever I was preparing for my full-on deployment to Korea, things were very tense, kind of like they are now. All of these boundaries are being pushed. All of these airspaces are being pushed. I bring it up because I read an article just the other day of South Korean jets scrambling because both Russian and Chinese aircraft entered their defensive airspace. These are big moves. These are not just small little things. These are probing. These are seeing how
Mhm.
you're going to react. These are like very high level, very tense moments. And I'm just really grateful that you kind of like touched on that and mentioned it because I also think it's important to have the things that we're working on, the projects, and all these things are social issues that you're trying to address in your way, in your media, in your graphic novel, talking about the diversity and how we're a combination of a lot of different things. We're a melting pot. We're
Mhm.
very rarely just this one thing. So also glad you brought up the villain, your super villain, all that kind of stuff, because I was definitely going to ask about that. So with that being the case and spinning it into some like today real world stuff,
Mhm.
who or what would you consider is the supervillain that's currently attacking Joshua Salgado right now? And what are you doing to fight him?
Ooh, I think the supervillain that's attacking Joshua Salgado is Joshua Salgado, and I say this because
Nice. Right?
I think that's the only person ourself, we are either the greatest cultivator of growth or we're the most decaying actor towards ourselves, you know? And I think sometimes one of the biggest things is that, and I'm working on it, is I beat myself up for mistakes or things of that nature and staying grounded when things don't always go as planned or those mistakes happen or life hits you in so many different angles. Like you mess something up or you set a plan and it doesn't always work out. You set a goal and you don't hit it within that timeline. Sometimes it's easy to let yourself kind of roll into that. And so I think that's my personal biggest weakness as a human being. I've done a lot of things to work on it and it's a lot better than it has been in the past few years, but there's still work to be done. And I think that's a lot of times what keeps me up at night. Cause then it stems into the idea is like, you can go deep and be like, if I failed at this, am I enough? Am I going to be good enough for it? And you start self doubting, right? Which is the opposite of, what we were talking about earlier with the reframing and the rebuilding and that self confidence and that self affirmation kind of mindset, which is very, 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 it can rip apart those mental systems that you've built for positivity. So that's my biggest, I guess, battle sometimes, I think. And I'm my own supervillain. I try not to let anything else or anybody else kind of affect my mood or my life because at the end of the day, you are responsible for those things.
That's super powerful. So, one of the things that I was grappling with, kind of leading up to kind of my breakdown as well, was creating that peace, creating that bubble around myself to where the external was not affecting it. The day to day events or actions still kept me kind of, I could still stay centered, balanced, and things
Mhm.
like that. And then I think sometimes whenever we do really get close to, like, having those big breakthroughs and those big successes, that's really where we're also going to meet some of the most resistance. So, for me, a lot of things collided at the same time. It was also kind of like you mentioned, COVID-19. The whole world was kind of getting ripped apart. The very
Mm,
fabrics of what everyone was used to in so many ways was getting called into question, was getting probed, was getting attacked, and was getting restructured. And it was a very complex, very dynamic environment to just navigate as a human, let alone while you're also trying to process, like we said, all of those things that we'd
mhm,
occurred. And then me also trying to drive forward with this vision of improving myself and maximizing and using my energy for like the things that are going to really contribute to my growth and that I can also pass on and help
yes.
others contribute to their growth. So kind of like you're making a whole army of superheroes
Mm,
in your book. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like you have this
yeah,
whole thing and that's a very fascinating concept. And so, yeah, all of those things just collided and it was really interesting. It's very hard to describe, but trying to draw some of those parallels there. So these were all kind of products of after your darkness, after your deployment, moving into your second deployment. So you had your second deployment. How would you say that your second deployment, because high op tempo, you were busy all the time. Did this help you focus and clarify your vision? Or did you find yourself with a whole lot more ideas and kind of in this analysis paralysis type frame?
I think it made me much more focused. I think it made me realize that, like, hey, we touched on earlier, need to be the sniper. Now let's pick a goal, which is build out the IP. And we're going to pick small goals or small, in a video game side quests that are going to build out certain skill sets that I know will be valuable for future endeavors within the business. And really, really published this graphic novel. And I sat on it. I got to deployment. We started flying. Like I hadn't really thought about it. And then about like three-quarters of the way through, I was starting to work on the next one. And I was like, wait a minute, Josh, you just made a 256-page graphic novel, a world, like a whole ass world with characters that have deep meanings. Sorry for swearing if, but a whole world with deep meaning and deep character and just this world. And I was like, wait a minute, you just get one person to read that and like one character or one planet or one alien, species, like you're just building something that people can enjoy and read and hopefully be inspired by, where it will be a telling of the time of how, like I mentioned, this character that feeds into proxy, warfare and stuff like that. So I realized like this is where I need to go with the brand. I was like, I just need to focus on storytelling and building characters. And I realized like, because we started off making t-shirts and designing t-shirts, and I realized like I have like now an infinite amount of t-shirts that I could make based off my comic book because it's 256 pages. I have a bunch of characters and a bunch of aliens and a bunch of different like scenes I could use to create these characters. And so I was like, well, the t-shirts are done. And I realized the trading cards, same thing. We're flying every other day. And so allocating my time to specific tasks was very important. What I realized is that there was a lot, I'm a very brainstormy, I'm very like high energy, like, I could come up with an idea and make it happen kind of person, do more with less. And so like I realized I needed to take a step back, and I took a step back and redefined the brand. I was like, hey, our mission is to build up an IP and intellectual property, eventually to hopefully one day make it to Netflix and to be able to rival Marvel and DC with the comics. And so I was like, well, we have a very startup, methodology, startup workflow of how we're doing this. It's very economical. And so like I was like, we just need to dial in the world. We need to dial in the audience, right? Who are we actually, getting this comic in front of? And so that was the biggest thing, was like focusing on getting that comic out there. I think we just hit over 200 downloads for this indie comic. And I mean, like,
Yeah.
to me at least, for someone who's like never really has been in this space of like, I'm not in any communities. I collected comics and I read comics all my life, but I've never been in any active like online communities or anything like that where I could just automatically promote it. I would never really have put it out there. I don't have any writing history or author history, so there's nothing, no previous audience bringing forward. So to me, 200 downloads was like, wow. The day I got back, yeah, so like yesterday, day before, I was like, holy hell, like we've pretty much hit 200 downloads. And so I've realized that that is the main focus, is let's get this comic in front of people. Let's see what people think. Let's keep creating stories. Let's keep creating characters. Let's do it so that there's a whole library, an anthology, a world, a cosmic world, a cosmos out there of characters and worlds and events. And we're going to see the Galactic Wanderer. That's our main character. He's going to start exploring. We're going to see him kind of being the leader of like, hey, go to this planet, this kind of thing. There's some rumblings here. Something's happened here. Let's go solve it. Let's go be kind of that hero, that kind of main character. And we're going to see him kind of arc into something and maybe build up a team that will have a large end game type event happen that we have kind of planned out. I've written out some overviews, some ending comics to kind of end the cosmos, timeline. And so that's the main goal.
Awesome. So you put a lot of work into this. You've
Mhm,
refined that focus over time, over your
mhm.
deployments. You're pinpointing your metrics, what you need to work on now to keep this on track. And you've already had success. You've already
Yes.
had a large volume of downloads. There's already interest. Obviously, people are
Mhm.
interested. They're engaging with it. So let's do that sniper thing. Like you were saying, let's just bring that scope in, bring that reticle in a little bit closer. Who is your comic for? Is it the operator, the kid, the dreamer? And with once you kind of define that, speak to them right now. What would you want them to know or hear?
I think it's really two avatars, as I say, two people. The dreamer, the person who's looking to accomplish something, the person that wants to be inspired, and the person that's lost their purpose, whether it be getting out of the military, post deployment, post college. I met a few people when I was doing my training. They get out of, D2 collegiate athletes, they stop having regular meets for track and now they're kind of off their purpose and they feel a little down about life and they feel like they're still in stellar shape, but it's just, and so that's the type of person is somebody who's outside of that purpose that needs to refine it. I want them to be very connected to the Galactic Wanderer and I want them to know that whatever struggle that you have now or whatever demons that you're facing now will reshape that new purpose, that new ideology that you're going to build. And it's only going to make you better and stronger once you process it and get through it. And you can't avoid it. And we all know the negative things that we do for ourselves that kind of keep us in that rut. So that's kind of the idea is let's get inspired and let's make that change to be the
I
Galactic Wanderer after, that story.
I love it. I love it. That's great stuff.
Mhm.
So, before deployment, you'd ask me for some advice.
Yes.
I just kind of, hey, what were some of the things that I had in my brain on my last deployment, last 2 deployments, and what was really useful for me at that time. Granted, where there's always just different things, and maybe I could have asked a few more clarifying questions to see exactly what some of your pain points were in the moment. But since you've been on that deployment, now I'm asking you, what is one of the things that you learned on this last deployment, my advice aside or whatever? Like, what is one main thing that you learned on this last deployment that you're going to apply to your company now that you're back from that deployment and you're moving forward with your entrepreneur vision?
One thing is definitely having specific tasks and specific goals that are focused on that sniper, like I've mentioned, earlier in this episode, that sniper focus, having goals that really support that. And then two, as we're looking to slowly build a team, as we build that team, taking into consideration that our members have goals too, and we can help them, define those goals in life, whether it be in the business or as we build this kind of networking team. I'm really focusing and say, hey, like you mentioned to me before I left, like giving people tasks to live up to and giving people little programs and stuff. As a leader, as a younger leader, kind of the same thing. Like, hey, what are your goals? Hey, let's work towards it. Let's make it actionable. And then helping people kind of have a world within the team, having a world of tasks that they're focused on and able to crush and creatively solve the problems and enjoy.
That is so exciting, man. Just that makes me light up right there. Just thinking about how you're scaling all of those things and you're moving them out of what you're using in your air mission unit. And now you're like, okay, I'm building this team. I'm building this culture. This is what we're building this galactic wanderer and all of this cosmos, right? And you're taking those pieces and you're formulating, systematizing, and finding those ways to help each of your team members get those big wins that they're looking for, not just within the product line and within this multiverse, but within their lives as well. That's beautiful. I love seeing it. So, if we have this conversation again in a year,
Mhm.
what does your absolutely cosmic or cosmic absolute universe, what's it looking like? Paint that picture for us.
So within a year, we're going to have definitely a bunch more comics published on the website. hopefully at that point we'll have volume 2 nearing close to finalized. The goal is to release at least 4 figures a quarter. And right now, this first release is only going to be 50 limited edition pieces. So hopefully we'd like to grow that to maybe 100 and really start to kind of build out in that multimedia piece where we have almost a limited edition figure run from the comic books of some characters and stuff. And continuing on this mission of eventually one day having some sort of Netflix film series based off the comic book, based off these characters, and really, really pushing it in that regard.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. That's a huge vision. I know that you're perfectly capable of executing it, bringing it to reality. I've seen you work in the past. I've seen your dedication, both in your personal life and what you bring to the table and the business world, and all of the things that you have endured just to get the role that you wanted to do in the military itself so that you can serve others. That's another character trait of yours that I've always valued, super respect, is that you're out there serving. Hey, yes, it was a challenge just to get there, to earn that, even just entry into the military, but you did it because you had a heart to serve. You wanted to help others. You wanted to give back to the nation, whatever that individual desire is, but it came from that heart of service. And I have a lot of respect for you for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate the kind words, Brent.
Yeah, I know you're
Wow.
going to crush it. I'm excited to see it as it develops. And as we wrap up, I'll give you the last word. Let our listeners know where they can find you, where they can check out this comic, and any last pieces of advice or anything you want to share with the listeners would be great.
So you can find us on Instagram. We do have a YouTube channel as well. So Instagram, YouTube, TikTok as well. We're cosmic_absolute. Again, we are working on publishing the next comic book on our website, cosmicabsolute.com. We have a bunch of gymwear, as well as the 256-page graphic novel is 100% free digital download. So you will get it emailed to you and it loads up in your books app. Again, is 100% free. And really, that's kind of the goal is keeping it free for everybody just to give some people some entertainment. I think the biggest piece of advice that I could give anyone or any of your listeners, hopefully, is that you just don't give up. Like, just keep pushing through, even in the hard times and in the good times. And your dreams are valid as anybody else's. And if it wasn't for the people to believe that, like Steve Jobs or any other, look at George Lucas, for instance, look at Jim Cameron, anybody else who's done great things, they believed in themselves and their goals just as much. And just because might seem outrageous to others doesn't mean that it's impossible. You just got to work at it and keep your heart there. That's the biggest piece of advice that I have. And Brent, to you, thank you. It's been an honor to be on your podcast. It was really great. And I appreciate the time you put into the questions and topics that we had. It was very in-depth and relationable to kind of what I'm doing right now. So I appreciate it. It's an honor and it's awesome to be on the show.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. I can't wait for us to reconnect, and we'll do this again. This was great.
Thank you. Thanks, Brent.